You're just in time for some great football history as we talk about a famous Yale player from early football and his fascinating maneuver. Timothy Brown of Football Archaeology joins us to tell us all about it.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of pigskindispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another entertaining podcast of Timothy P. Brown of footballarchaeology.com, joining us to talk about some great football history. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Thank you. Look forward to chatting. We're going to be talking about Pa Corbin, so I will not start with a dad joke.
Oh boy, he just had to sneak it in there. Blindsides us with the dad joke with the paw. But Pa Corbin is such an interesting figure from football history and Yale history, and a lot of people haven't learned or heard a lot about him. But he was a pretty popular guy back when he played. So maybe you could share this story with them in this tidbit that you wrote called "Pa Corbin and a Trick Well Executed."
Yeah. So this is like similar to the podcast from, I guess, 2 weeks ago about the archaic language, but a trick well executed was a description of something that he did in a game. And so Corbin was around, he was pretty early on, 1880s, Yale. And if this one's probably one of those where it's worth taking a look at the team picture in the tidbit, or if you just Google Pa Corbin, you'll see an image of him, because he's not the most attractive looking fellow.
And folks, that link is, if you're on YouTube, you can go to the show notes and look at it, or the show notes on the podcast notes, and you can get right to Tim's tidbit to see the images.
So, but he was playing at the time when football was transitioning from rugby to, starting to incorporate football rules. So, in early rugby, so early football, you had the maul, and you didn't, there was not the intention to snap the ball back and push it back and run sideways. It was basically a pushing maul kind of game where you kick the ball forward. And so that was the original thing. But, and then as the Americans started changing the game, they started emphasizing kicking the ball back out of the maul, and then some back would run it, would pick it up, toss it to another back, and they'd try to sweep around end. So again, what we think of as the sweeping rugby game really originated in American football, and then they later picked that up. So when they formalized the scrimmage in 1882, one team maintained possession, and they would have one of the players would heel the ball back. So they'd use their foot to snap it back. And so typically, it could have been almost anyone on the team who did that. But then, within a few years, they tended to have like one player who was always the snapper back, what we would now call a center. And so, then, it kind of, they formalized plays, and people lined up in consistent formations all the time. And yet so normally the play would start by the center or the snapper back snapping the ball back, but he still had the right to kick it forward. And so sometimes, and it wasn't very often, sometimes they'd kick the ball forward and then he'd run up, pick it up, and take off. Just depended on how the defense aligned and whether he thought he could, kick it that way. So one of the things that's kind of cool about it is just like in the early days, it wasn't, we tend to think of them wanting to maintain possession of the ball, but it's probably the opposite, because they were much more of a field position was more important than possession. And that's still the case with rugby today. They'll get a ball and they'll just kick it right back, right? And so, it was that kind of logic that was going on. but so, it came to be that, by the time, the 1887 Harvard-Yale game came along, pretty much Corbin, who was a center for Yale, would always heel the ball back. But it was kind of a key point in the game. And instead of heeling it back, he dribble kicked it. So he just barely knocked the ball over to the right guard, who then picked up the ball and handed it back to the quarterback. And in the meantime, Corbin had circled around behind the quarterback, got the ball from the quarterback, swept around end and scored a touchdown. So, and so that was the trick well executed, the trick play. So it's just one of those things like, you can't imagine it in today's game. You can't imagine the center kicking the ball forward instead of snapping it. Kicking it to the guy next to him, who then hands it to the quarterback, who then hands it to the center. So it's just one of those almost unimaginable plays now. But, it was kind of a big deal then, and helped Yale beat Harvard that year. And then, just the last point or two is that, so snapping with the hands started in about 1892. And that in part had to do, I think, with, up until that point, they were still pushing and shoving in the line. And so by bending over and, using your hands, you had better control of the ball than, using your feet. But even when they started doing that, then the center could still kick the ball forward. And that remained, in the rules through 1909. So 1910 is when they finally got rid of the center being able to kick the ball forward.
Hmm. Wow, that's definitely some unique things. Now, that play would have been drawn up. Could that possibly be the handiwork of Mr. Walter Camp? Because when you've been coaching, Pa?
Yeah, I don't know. In 87, I'm not sure what his role was in 87. I mean, by then he had been out to California, to
Yeah,
coach.
he was at Stanford for a while by the time.
But in
Yeah.
87, I'm not sure where he was. And
Okay.
even that, there were times when he wasn't really on the field coaching. He was more just administrative sort of guy. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously they planned it out, right? I mean, it was a
All right.
planned play. So, and he must have had some pretty decent athleticism in order to want him to run the ball, right? So,
Well, I mean, actually, all the parties involved had to have some. 'Cause I mean, there's a
yeah,
lot going on there. To
yeah, yeah,
first of all, you have to get that kick to be just in the right place, and you have a lineman handling the ball, which they were much more athletic. They were all the same size as all the other guys back then, but not what we have today. But still, a guy doesn't handle the ball as that often is doing that. Everybody has to do their job for it to succeed and sell the play.
yeah,
So.
yeah. So anyway, it's just a crazy, cool story about a cool guy, Pa Corbin, and then just a point in time or era in the game that you just long gone.
Yeah, excellent. It really helps us to when you tell stories like this to help us appreciate, what football was back in, over 100 years ago and how it evolved into the game it is today. And we can see some elements that are true to the game today and some that we don't recognize. And you do this a lot in your tidbits, Tim, that you share with us each and every day. Maybe you could tell the listeners how they can partake in this and enjoy some of these.
Yeah, just go to footballarchaeology.com, which is a Substack, newsletter blog. You can subscribe there, then you'll get an email every day with or not, well, whenever I publish a story. And otherwise, just go there and check out the archives. There's some archives that are free to everybody, some that are only available to paid, members, and then otherwise you can follow me on Blue Sky, and because I post everything there as well.
Yeah, folks, I definitely encourage you to do so to take a look at these and join in on reading Tim's things as often as you can because even folks like us that are into football history each and every day, I don't think there's a day goes by where there isn't something in one of your tidbits that I didn't know or just say, oh, wow, I didn't really look at it in that light or something. And a lot of it, this Pa Corbin one here today has learned something new every day. It's just like Will Rogers used to say. And we appreciate you for doing that.
Very good.
Okay. We'll talk to you next week then,
Okay.
Tim. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.